Never play chess with a cat. Because the cat will walk on the board, knock the pieces slowly off the edge, turn and show you its tail, which will wag in your face, jump on your lap, and perfectly content that it won the game. We live in a world where people refuse to play by the rules. And I think we inhabit a country that was built upon people saying, I'm out of here. I'm going to play somewhere else. We live in a world where people expect others to follow the rules, but make exceptions for themselves. We live in a world where the rules are changing. We live in a world where people are playing different games. We live in a chaotic world and wonder, are there any rules? We do not like being told what to do, and telling others what to do is an unwelcome chore. It seems that resistance is the only consistent rule. Now, a dog will play by the rules. You throw a ball and it will bring it back. And so you throw the ball again and you bring it back. It brings it back. And after the 30th time, you're tired of throwing the ball. And the dog barks. Follow the rules. So you pretend to throw the ball, and the dog runs out and then comes back and expects you to throw the ball so it can bring it back. Rules make life predictable, but sometimes they feel tedious. The lines tell us whether we are in bounds or out of bounds. They declare whether you've hit a fair ball or a foul ball. I'm happy for the lines on the road, which encourage most people to stay in their lane. But we have people who refuse to play by the rules. They act like victims when asked to wear a mask. They want the freedom to spread disease and to get sick themselves. They liken a mask to the Star of David that the Nazis used to identify and kill Jews. These people cannot tell the difference between saving lives and genocide, and they live among us. What is the standard of truth? Science can tell us what is known at any given time, but science changes as new data comes in. And so some people say, that's too inconsistent. I want unchanging rules. And if you want unchanging rules, you rely on beliefs, because beliefs are not subject to evidence or facts. They can be unchanging. So we have evidence that vaccines work and the risks far outweigh, or the benefits far outweigh the risks, yet people refuse to take them. In Craven County, only 42.8% of people over 12 are fully vaccinated. That means that over half of the population remain potential carriers and contractors of the disease. Yet despite that, the numbers of COVID cases and deaths are falling. So perhaps maybe this is enough vaccination to make a change. Science will help us determine that. Another factor is that 80% of people over 65 are fully vaccinated. And so, surveying this congregation, that raises our odds quite a bit. Thus, the odds of members of this congregation catching and spreading the disease is low, which is why we chose to open at this time. There are several rules that apply, but two I want to mention is the rule of self-preservation and the rule of caring for others. This congregation has chosen through the ad hoc committee and the board the rule of self-preservation. The realization that most of our people are vaccinated, and those who aren't usually have been choosing to wear masks. And so small gatherings are safe for those who are vaccinated, and unvaccinated people should assume their own risk, and those who are vaccinated who feel more comfortable wearing a mask are free to do so. We're relying on people's individual responsibility that they take care of themselves. But by the standard of caring for others, or making sure everyone is safe, we're not doing that as much as we could. Because Craven County is still rated by the Centers for Disease Control as a place where the risk of spread is moderate. Beaufort County is low, Pamlico is substantial, and Jones County is a very high-risk county. So we have varying levels of risk surrounding us. Now, if the risk in Craven County was high, and we really wanted to open, the rule of self-preservation would demand that we check vaccination status at the door, and we should protect attendees even at the cost of their privacy. But that rule would violate the Unitarian Universalist ideal of inclusion. And I personally didn't want to be the referee enforcing rules. And I know our greeters. They are fine and wonderful and welcoming people, but I think they would make lousy bouncers. Knowing that vaccinated people are safe, and that statistically most of our attendees are vaccinated, we can instead rely on the honor system. We are not applying the rule of absolute care for others, because as a public place, it's theoretically possible that we would attract a cross-section of Craven County. If a cross-section of Craven County came in, this would be a super spreader event. It would have that potential, with only 40% people vaccinated. So when we're considering these rules, one rule is pitted against another, and we make choices. We have decided to let unvaccinated people care for themselves. Let them determine their safety risk. Be responsible for the risks and the consequences. We are not checking their status. Part of me wants to protect them from themselves. The empathetic person just wants everybody to be safe. But sometimes the rule of caring is intrusive. I mean, when we care for children, we do things that are against their will. We physically restrain them from playing on the highway. This is because we love them. But adults really resist being treated like children. And so when we try to protect them against their will, we will be rebuffed. But we do certain things. We've created some social distance. We are restricting singing to people who have volunteered their vaccination status so that we know that they're not a risk to any unvaccinated people in this congregation. But with any aspect of society and making of rules, we have to decide how much freedom we will allow. Alcoholism kills many people. At one time, this society tried to ban alcohol, but that caused other problems such as bootlegging and organized crime. We could have stepped up enforcement, but that was deemed too expensive, both monetarily and the social costs. So at one point, we decided to repeal prohibition and let people decide for themselves. We are at a similar point with COVID. What should be the rules that protect most people? And how do we enforce those rules? How do we take on responsibility for ourselves without taking on the responsibility for everyone else? My impulse to care for others would want stronger enforcement so less people get COVID and less people die. But this nation is dysfunctional. I encourage all of us to be functional, and I want us to have compassion on the dysfunctional. I want the society to provide medical care for those who take unnecessary risks and get sick. And I want heart transplants for those who refuse to eat healthy and exercise, category I belong in. I want HIV care for those who have unprotected sex and share needles. And I want COVID care for those who refuse vaccination. Yet I do not want our society's rules based around dysfunction. I'd rather have them be based pandering to those who do take responsibility for themselves. I mean, I do not want to legalize drunk driving. I want to encourage safe sex. I want to educate people about healthy living. I want to teach the history of racism in America. I want health departments to be able to enforce rules that save lives. We have to set a standard to point out a direction we want to go. But as we're setting that standard, we have to be fully aware that people will violate that standard. They will not play by the rules. Not playing by the rules, they will kill themselves and, unfortunately, others. We may encourage people. We can care for people. But we're stuck with wondering, what can we do when people refuse to care for themselves? And that's an issue I think all of us have experienced in our families at one level or another over a myriad of issues. It's a bigger issue than just COVID. You know, some of the things we do I like on a technical basis, that like vaccinations went up in Ohio after they offered a lottery. But I kind of resent, personally, I played the rules, I was good for nothing, and I got nothing. We have to kind of sometimes sacrifice our own sense of what's fair while maintaining our own integrity. Schools require vaccinations. Whether they will require vaccinations for this particular disease is still an open question. But generally, it's an agreed upon rule that keeps most people safe. Those who choose not to play by that rule are choosing to play another game. They may be choosing to homeschool, or now there are even more online opportunities for schooling, which keep all people safe. All of us are free to withdraw from society. And if we do, we must be prepared and accept the fact that society will probably withdraw itself from us. There's the old thing that we used to get on our report card, some of us. I always got talks too much. So that's why I chose this profession. But there was also a thing that the kindergarten teacher would put on your thing, plays well with others. It's more complicated than it was in kindergarten. A person is free to be drunk all the time, but that does not mean we have to let a drunk into our house. We are free to choose whether we play by the rules. And we must be willing to live by the consequences for violating the rules. Thoreau went to jail for not paying taxes for war. He accepted the consequences. Protesters have long gone to jail as they try to change the rules. And the rules need to change. The rules that have given me white privilege need to change so that my black son has a viable future. And my son taught me about games where rules change. When he was young, I taught him board games like Candyland and Trouble, and I taught him card games like Go Fish. But by middle school, he was teaching me games, and he brought this deck of cards called Magic the Gathering. And he tried to explain the rules to me, and he did. And then I would put a card down, and then he'd pull a card from his deck and say, well, this violates that card. See this rule that's on this card. And every card came with its own set of rules. You know, I'm used to playing cards where the Queen of Diamonds is the Queen of Diamonds. And its rank really doesn't change depending on what the other card is played. And he tried to teach me and get me out of my old fogey ways. And he eventually gave up and started playing role-playing games, live action, online, where he could build his own character and choose what weapons and what strength he would have and what speed he would have, and make all these calculations about what would be the best type of character for this particular level of the game that he was playing. One was even able to choose one's gender and species. and one conquers one world and advances to another world where the rules change again. Those of us who grew up playing marathon games of Monopoly are much different thinkers than a younger generation who is just fully aware that the rules are situational and they change and they change and they keep changing, and what works to your advantage here will be a disadvantage there. I mean, this is so different from my experience of play. In 1973, the American League created a designated hitter rule. The National League still hasn't accepted it, and I'm not sure what I feel about it. But it's only been since 73 for me to make this change. Modern play is more flexible. It adapts to new situations, and we are in an adapting age. The definition of news and democracy is changing. Gender is a continuum, not an either-or proposition. Some rule changes I like, and others confuse me, and others I hate. And others hate the rule changes that I applaud. How do we ever get along? I mean, it's a struggle. But I think that the miracle is not that we fight. The miracle is that we ever get along. The fact that there's any common ground. So we gather today for Sunday service for the first time in 14 months. And we have a set of rules. And as I said in the newsletter, those are the rules for June. The rules will change as the situation changes. Hopefully, a 50% vaccination rate in this county will be enough. But if there is another spike in COVID cases in this county, we might have to close back down for a while. And so we're continuing with streaming because different people have different levels of comfort of being out in public at this point. I hate the fact that I'm wearing dress shoes for the first time in 14 months. But they said I had to show up. But we can find our way. Humans are adaptable. As a kid, I played baseball on a field that had no bases. Just general areas of worn dirt. And the hole that was deepest in that patch of worn dirt was considered the base. Sometimes our baseball was covered with leather. Sometimes it was covered with electrical tape I stole from my dad's workshop. It was not a regulation ball. But that's the beauty of play. It's the possibility of adapting creatively. Artists learn from the masters, but each generation finds a new way and makes new rules. Music evolves. The rules are there, but then they're bent. An opera tune played on a piano rather than sung creates a different effect. And a good effect, I might add. People are always changing modes and time signatures and tempos, and people bend the strings to create pitches in between the written notes. In Stephen Schwartz's musical, Children of Eden, he writes of Adam and Eve becoming bored with the perfection of Eden. And the night was perfect, and their dreams were perfect. And they woke with the dawn and smiled with a yawn at one another. And with a gentle kiss, they soon discovered this: their love was more than sister and brother. And God said, well, after all, they were made for each other. And their love was perfect. And the day was perfect. And the next was perfect. And the next was perfect. And the day after that, and the day after that, each one perfect as could be. Perfect as one could ever be. But after the rule of not eating from the tree was broken, new possibilities opened up. Eve sings, the spark of creation burning bright within me. The spark of creation won't let me rest at all. And I discover or build or uncover a thing that I can call my celebration of the spark of creation. The spark of creation may have burned forever. The spark of creation, I am the keeper of the flame. We think all we want is lifetime leisure, each perfect day the same, endless vacation. Well, that's all right if you're some kind of crustacean. But when you're born with an imagination, sooner or later you're feeling the fire getting hotter and higher, the spark of creation. We live in a broken world. Broken in many places. The norms of politics are gone. Will it be for good or evil? The old rules do not apply. And there will never be a perfect set of rules. We will try new rules. Some will succeed, some will fail. Ideas that I am certain of today may live for generations, or they may die with me. There is the slight possibility I might be wrong. But we can only play by the rules that we think are right. We can only invite other people to play with us. If we force people to play with us, it's not play for them. And they will resist, just as we will probably resist their coercion. One of us will be right, maybe both, maybe neither. But we play by rules for as long as they work. Then we adapt. Then we create with the fire of creation. We play a new game. Play with whoever is willing to play along. Let others choose to play or be on their way. Evolution will declare the winner long after each of us is gone. Stay playful, my friends. May we bless and be blessed.